This is Chris Martinez for Sonoran Desert Institute, and I am going to be wood staining this stock. So, got my rag, and I got my Minway wood finish. Just gonna wipe the whole stock down. And I'll wipe it with the grain. And apply a nice even coat. That's what that's looking like. I'll come back once I have all of it done. So, I've got the stock here stained up, and right now I'm just going to take a minute to stain ram right here. Okay. Now that I've got these two done, I'm going to set this off to the side. And what I will do is let this all sit for about 15 minutes, and then I will run a rag over it, another cotton rag. I will kind of dry the excess off, and then we will let this sit and dry for some hours. So now the finish on the stock has dried, and so we're gonna take some steel wool, and we're just gonna buff over it until the texture's smooth all the way across, and you can feel it. It'll go from just kind of a little bit of a rough feeling, almost kind of a stickiness to it, you might say, and it'll just turn nice and smooth. And so we'll sit here and we will do this whole stock like this. And once we are done with the buffing, using a steel wool, it's a double O steel wool that is. Once we have completed this, then I'll grab the True Oil and I will start to use True Oil on the gun stock. Now that we have buffed everything out with our steel wool, we will now use our True Oil and apply that. And what we'll do is, I have a small little pinhole in the cap, not the cap, in the seal, and that's so that I don't spill or dump out a bunch more than I need. So we'll just use our hands, empty that into our hand, a little drip there, and then we will start to coat the gun, and we'll get a nice even coat. All the way down the gun. Tends to go on very smooth and easily with your hand. Some people use a brush or a rag for this part, but you'll tend to get streaks when you do that. best way is just to use your hands. Make sure you've got a nice even coat on the whole thing. And again, this should take a few coats to get all of the pores filled in, or not pores, but all the grains filled in. And then once that's done, we'll come back over it with a thing of steel wool. And when we do that, we'll rough the finish up, we'll buff it, and that'll get ready for the next coat of Tru-Oil. And when we're finally got the amount of Tru-Oil on the gun that we want, we'll then do kind of a final buffing to get the finish to the texture we want it. And after that, we should be good. Okay, so the stock seems to have dried, so what we'll do now is take our steel wool and we're going to buff over it, get it ready for another coat. We just want this to be kind of smoothed out here. And this next coat we apply might be the last one we need. Starting to look pretty good. So, I'll finish this up and we'll get back to you. So now that we've got the stock buff, we are going to add what I think will be my last coat of Tru-Oil. After this coat, I just have to buff the finish a little. Bring the shine down, make sure it's smooth. Make sure everything's covered here. And once this is all done, dried up, I'll be back to show you the finished product. Okay, so we now have buffed out our last coat, and this is the end result. It's got a nice shiny finish on it. I didn't dull the finish down too much. I do like the more of a shiny finish to it. For the most part, it came out very well. There's this spot on the bottom end right here where I've had a hard time getting the Tru-Oil to really stick, so I might still try to get a little bit, maybe a couple dots on there. That turned out really well. Set that down. And the ramrod came out very well also. I like the grain in this wood. It showed up pretty well. I wasn't sure how well it would show up because of the how light the wood was, but I mean, as you can see through here, it's very nice. Overall, I'm pretty satisfied with this. I can tell the mistakes I've made though more now that I've stained it, so that's pretty easy to see. So far, we have used this Minway wood finish. This was the finish we used on the stock and on the rod, and then we used this Birchwood Casey Tru-Oil. This was the oil that we applied, the finish oil, on there. So we've got that, and we've polished up the brass as well, gotten rid of all the file marks I had on there from where we had fit it. So that looks pretty good. And all the pieces that I needed to polish up, all the brass pieces, are done. And of course, with everything, with the wood and the brass, I have a 180 grit sanding block. And then for the finer stuff, I used a 220, and then for my finals, I used a 320. So these are just normal sandpaper that you could pick up at any hardware store. Back to the brass. All of this came out pretty well. The only thing I have to say is I might go back and get a little bit finer grade sandpaper just to kind of get some of the kind of looks like almost brush scratch marks on there off. And if that turns out to be too nice of a finish to where I see every little thing that happens to it, I might go back down and re-go over it with this 320 and bring everything back to that grade. But these are the last two things I have. These polished up very nicely. All the marks that were on this were slashes, pretty deep slashes on some of these spots, but they look pretty good. Came out very nice. Overall, I'm very satisfied with this. The process was fairly straightforward. The only, let's say, issues were time, because sanding down little marks on brass can sometimes kind of be time consuming if they're not very shallow superficial marks. If they're a little bit of a deeper gouge, it can end up taking a lot of your time, so that's something to be careful on. But other than that, I really enjoyed this project. I plan to do another one and hopefully make it without all of the mistakes that I made. Even though there weren't really a lot of big mistakes, it was just a lot of small little things that I did here and there, like that chip from wood carving in the back of the stock. So that is my wood stain and brass polish. Thank you.